Hello, everybody. Mr. H here with you. Welcome to the Middle East, or the term that's currently in vogue, Southwest Asia. There's two things you should notice about the Middle East. One, it's usually in chaos. That's basically standard operating procedure. Second thing you should notice is, you ever notice when one power controls the entire area, everything seems to calm down? Yeah, it's happened before. Yeah, the Middle East has not only been calm, it's been the center of intellectual and commercial development. In the 700s BC, Assyria controlled the whole place. Nice and calm. Persia, remember that? Darius and Xerxes there, 500s BC. Umayyad Alafid Caliphate, Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphate, excuse me, they controlled the entire area. Everything was calm. And then these empires break down. You got different countries all crammed into too small of a place. We end up with anarchy. Now, the last power that controlled the entire area was the Ottoman Turks. Here's the Ottoman Empire that's peaked there around the 1500s. Look how big this thing got. Controlled the Middle East. All this is desert down here. So everything was pretty calm. But you know, empires go, right? They have a beginning, they reach a height, and then they start to decline. And the Ottoman Empire starts declining. They lose all this, all that, but they still got the Middle East. That's what really matters to the Ottoman Turks. And everything there is calm until about, say, 1914. Does that date ring a bell? Yep, World War I. Now, the Ottoman Empire had been kind of on the downslide for a long time. They called it the sick man of Europe and occasionally the Eastern question because people were expecting it to collapse. It's definitely gotten smaller, but it's still there. Serbia, over there in the Balkans, this is Bulgaria, so Serbia's about here, broke loose in 1813. Mr. H's people over here in Greece in 1821. Bulgaria, 1885. You know, the whole dam is about to break there. See, Crete, 1896 over here, where the British stole it and gave it over here to the Greeks. So, you know, Ottoman Empire is kind of about to fall apart, but it hasn't gone yet. It's still there. When the 20th century rolls around, Libya's going to go to the Italians over here in a quick little war. 1912, 1913, we got the Balkans War. All the Balkan countries jump on the Turks and keep them confined to this in 1912. In 1913, everybody jumps Bulgaria, including the Turks. They get a little bit back. Then 1914, World War I breaks loose. Italy switches sides, and Ottoman Empire jumps in to join Germany and Austria. And it does not go well for the Turks. The empire's been tottering. This is what pushes it right over the top. Now, the Ottoman Empire is going to completely collapse. And it's a bad time for Turkey. You saw all the wars, one behind the other, getting mixed up in. Losing to Italy in 1911, the Balkan Wars, 12 and 13, World War I, 1914 up to 1918. And the entire empire finally collapses. The Europeans are swarming over it like vultures. Yeah, not just the Middle Eastern provinces, but the part of the Ottoman Empire, the part of Turkey that's actually Turkish. And the whole thing's about to collapse. And Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, a general, steps up to save Turkey. We call him the George Washington of modern Turkey. His real name, Mustafa Kemal. We call him Ataturk. That means father of the Turks. Got this James Bond looking photo here, but hey, he knows what's going on and he's going to rally Turkey because not only is everything collapsed in 1918, we got the Greeks invading in 1919 along with a lot of European aid. So this guy has to go and fight to keep the empire, well, the empire's collapsed, trying to keep the country from collapsing. And we call this, or they call it rather, the Turkish War of Independence, the old Greco-Turkish War of 1919 and 1922. Yes, Mr. H's objectivity is being strained at this point. Nonetheless, the Turks will hold off the Greeks, they hold off everybody else, and though the Ottoman Empire is gone, the Turkish Republic survives, and it might actually be better for them. It's smaller, it's leaner, and maybe even meaner. What am I talking about? See, this is all that's left of what used to be the Ottoman Empire. Well, there's no Ottoman Empire. Now is the Turkish Republic. The Turks will tell you this right now. They drop a dividing line between the Ottoman Empire and the Turkish Republic. They do this for a reason. Starting over, I guess. I don't know. But at least this new country, the Turkish Republic, is ethnically Turkish, a bit more compact. easier to run, and they can basically let all the anarchy break loose to their south and not worry about it. Now, what happened over here? Yeah, something very bad happened over here. This region over here is called Armenia. Now, the Turks are Muslim, Sunni Muslim, and the Armenians are Christian. And during the war, First World War, and a few other instances, uh, Turkish military, Ottoman military, excuse me, went on a rampage, and they are accused of committing genocide against the Armenian people. So these three issues are always going to pop up in Turkish politics. And here's number one, the Armenian genocide. They screamed that the Turks had massacred lots of Armenians, and clearly this happened. However, the Turkish Republic will tell you, no, that was the Ottoman Empire. That is a complete different legal state, and the Turkish Republic, which is a separate country, had nothing to do with this. So every time they try to get reparations or get the Turks to apologize or something of that nature, you're going to get that same answer. Ottoman Empire is one thing. Here's the dividing line here with Ataturk, and now it becomes the Turkish Republic. Second thing that always pops up in Turkish politics, secular versus Islamic government. Ottoman Empire, clearly an Islamic state, right? Not fundamentalist, but Islam was there. The Turkish Republic, under Ataturk, since then has been secular. They're Muslim, it's there, it's important, but they run their government by secular lines. There's no caliphate, right? Religion has nothing to do with their politics as far as Middle Eastern standards go. And every now and again, an Islamic political party starts to edge its way into power. Yeah, the military steps in from time to time. They launch, sometimes it's a coup, sometimes it's just what they call emergency drill, and they get rid of some people. This happens from time to time. It happened recently back there in 2016. They just sort of had an extended unannounced military drill in the middle of Ankara. Funny that, right? And the third thing that pops up every now and again, people accuse the Turks of neo-Ottoman dreams. Yeah, they think the Turks want to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. That's why they're mixed up in Syria right now. People are accusing them of trying to clear out northern Syria and take it for themselves. Turkish military is currently operating in Libya. They say it's there to stabilize the country. Other people have their own theories about why that's happening. So these three issues always pop up in Turkish politics. Yeah, this also dates back to the 70s when they invaded Cyprus. All right, so this is all three of these things keep popping up all the time. So Turkish politics always revolve around these three issues. Good thing to know. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod, say no more. Now, why is the rest of the Middle East so screwed up? Well, like I said, it's the Middle East. And now there is a lack of a single controlling power. Now that the Ottoman Empire is gone and the Turkish Republic is confined up here willingly, this is why the anarchy breaks loose in the Middle East. France and Britain are trying to divide it up amongst themselves, right? Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. Here's the original map. This one's a little bit clearer. The French want to control this part of the Middle East. The British are interested down here. Call this international zone because we have Jews and Palestinians living here. Get back to that later. And if you notice, here's supposed to be Turkey, right? Want a Russian zone over here. The Russians want to control the straits over here. Look at this. The French in this part. The Italians even got a piece of this. That was the idea, and that's why they call it the Turkish War of Independence there from 1919 to 1922. Remember? They're fighting with Greece, but the other Europeans try to sneak their way in there too. That's why Ataturk had to fight to defeat the Greeks and also make sure this does not happen. Hence, Turkish War of Independence. See what I'm getting at? But meanwhile, the rest of the Middle East is going to plunge headfirst into anarchy because there is no longer a single controlling power in the region. Let's complicate it even more. We've got France on one side, Britain on the other. Remember the international zone? Now it gets even more confusing because we have people living there, and we're not sure who lived there first because if you ask them, they claim they did. On one side, we have the Jewish people. On the other side, the Palestinian people. But they're not really on one side or the other because they're in the same place. Theodore Herzl, the father of Zionism, late 19th century Great Britain. He pretty much goes out to announce to everybody the land of Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here their spiritual, religious, political identity was shaped, which is true. Here they first attained statehood, briefly, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave the word eternal, and you can't see it down here, book of books, right? So there's a very big religious aspect, obviously, to the Holy Land for three different religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Remember the Crusades? We're not quite headed there yet, but there's quite a bit of controversy. Now, it had Lord Balfour's Declaration of London back in 1894, where Britain was committed to finding a homeland for the Jewish people, that homeland being in Israel. Problem is, somebody also lives there already. So the British and French are trying to carve out what they call a mandate. The League of Nations gives you this former colony that belonged to somebody else, in this case Turkey, Ottoman Empire, and they're supposed to hang on to it till it governs themselves. And the only problem is that, they'll never be able to govern themselves, according to British and French, so they're just going to hang on to it forever. Over here, what's going to be Syria one day, the French have it carved up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different states. There's Lebanon. Part around Antioch, run by Alawites. They call us the state of Aleppo, the state of Damascus, right? Down here, the Druze. These are these two in particular, artificial countries. They gave that to Turkey, the Turks are living there. These are artificial countries right here. I mean, they're not real. This is the line out in the desert someplace, and they're not really going to acknowledge these are two different countries. Now, the Druze are a religious minority, so are the Alawites, and Lebanon is basically its own country to begin with. So they already got too many countries in too small a place, and they're insisting on dividing it even more. That's just a recipe for chaos. Now, let's take a look over at Israel. All right, it's already a small place to begin with. Let's divide it even more. They've got a Palestinian side right here, and they've got a Jewish side. They're very small. They're not really connected with each other. This is mostly desert down here. Don't want that for you. All right, so none of this stuff is going to work. They've got everything divided in a small area, divided even smaller. Now, you're just begging for trouble here. Now, no one really cared much. They were happy to keep it the way it was, but boom, here's the big deal, oil. When did this happen? When did oil become such a big deal in the Middle East? Well, late 20s, early 30s. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Middle Eastern cast over here. Now, this used to be divided up with nomads all over the place. Hard to find a map because, it's the middle of the desert. No one really knows where the borders are. But Ibn Saud, Saudi Arabia, right? He is the guy who unites all the tribe into one country in 1932. And guess what they discovered in 1938? Oil. They've known it's there since at least 1914, but now they found big reserves. They actually know how to look underground and what they're looking for now. So, hey, Saudi Arabia goes into the oil business. Saudi Arabia tends to be basically a businessman's paradise. They're conservative, they're pro-Western, Sunni, not Shia, and they're business first. This is what they're into. I just want to sell oil. Business. That's all it is. Business. I don't care about your political beliefs. Until Israel gets mentioned, then everybody loses their mind because Palestinians are fellow Arabs and they're being pushed off their land by what they regard as invaders, whereas the Jews saw the Arabs as the invaders coming on land they used to own. See the problem? And then Europe gets caught in the middle because Britain in particular had a commitment to a Jewish homeland. The United States tends to focus on Israel because, large Jewish population over here and a lot of votes. And, the whole thing tends to go, as you've guessed, completely insane. It's the Middle East. If it wasn't this, it'd be something else. Israeli independence on May the 14th, 1948. Note the date, 1948. What was happening, say, 1942, 1945? Yeah, remember the Holocaust in Europe? Well, now they've come to their homeland, and believe me, nobody's taking it from them. And if anybody tries, they're going to fight. Write this down for me real quick and get ready for the next map. Alrighty, here we are, the next map. Israel might be a small country, but it's a really tough country. Grabbing a drink here. If you spent 3 years surviving the Holocaust in Europe, and now you come to your homeland, and Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, everybody's threatening to push it into the sea, you are going to fight like there is no tomorrow, because if you've noticed, it's not that big a country and there is no tomorrow. So, Israelis actually win. The armies aren't very well organized because these countries have only been around for a little while, but the Israelis are going to win. They've got lots of foreign volunteers, lots of weaponry, post-World War II weaponry showing up over here. So they're going to win their independence in 1948. It's kind of a strange looking country, but hey, they got their own country at least. In 1956, the Egyptians are trying to take the Suez Canal for themselves, push the French and British out. France, Britain, and Israel conspire to take it back, and Egypt gets caught flat-footed, and the Israelis grab the entire Sinai Peninsula. They have to hand it back because the United States gets mad at them. We're trying not to turn the Middle East into one of those firework places and some guy running through with a torch, you know? Now, after that, if the Americans are backing Israel and you're an Arab country, pick one, who would you turn to for aid in the middle of the Cold War? Who can match the United States in weaponry and aid? There's only one country that can do that. Soviet Union. So suddenly these Arab countries, very Islamic and very religious, are going to the atheistic Soviet Union for aid, military aid. Exactly. It's just business, and they're trying to beat the Israelis where it actually becomes personal. 1967, the Israelis get the drop, and all three of these countries, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt, that formed an alliance with the express objective of destroying Israel. The Israelis got the jump on them in 1967, took the Golan Heights, took the West Bank, and grabbed the Sinai again. This time they're hanging on to it. So this causes a lot of problems. The Israelis will annex this. Hey, now they got some depth in their country. Take the Golan Heights, they can stare down into Damascus, and they're going to hang on to this for a bargaining chip. In 1973, Egypt gets the jump on the Israelis, caught them off guard because they got cocky after all these wins. The Syrians cause some problems up here in the Golan Heights. Jordan stays out of it in 73. They actually get a draw. They take a little bit back, and believe it or not, Israel and Egypt sign a peace treaty. The Israelis hand back the Sinai Peninsula in exchange for peace with Egypt. And now it appears that Israel may not be loved in the Middle East, but it appears that the Arab countries at least tolerate its existence. And we're still trying to figure out what to do about the Palestinian problems because they still live in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and they aren't planning on leaving either. Again, the Arab Middle East, I like to stress, tends to get along with the United States except when it comes to the Israeli question, or as they would like to call it, the Palestinian question. Here's the King of Jordan. Took a picture a couple years ago. Look at this. Man's wearing a Western suit, clean shaven, probably got a Dallas Cowboy sticker somewhere in the back. Need to talk to him about that. Here we are in Saudi Arabia, King of Saudi Arabia, talking to, having a great time here with the U.S. Secretary of State time, John Kerry. I love these guns in the window, man. There are no gun laws in Saudi Arabia. Okay, don't bring them around the king. Other than that, I don't think anybody really cares. So the Arab Middle East, again, tends to get along with the United States, except when it comes to this Israeli/Palestinian question because they want to sell oil. Now we have our own oil. It's not quite as important, but we're still getting along fairly well. Because they'd rather make money and build stuff like this in Qatar. Look at the size of this thing. All right, a little hard to do that when all your money goes into fighting a war. Now, let's talk about Iran. Iran, remember we launched that coup in 1953 and put the Shah, right here, Pahlavi, in charge of Iran. He had a lot of human rights violations, a lot of torture. But remember, it's the Cold War. We supported people we ordinarily wouldn't support and did things we ordinarily wouldn't do. And he becomes our ally. And look at this guy. He's hanging out with JFK. He's got a nice suit over here. It's all very much pro-Western. 1979, they have a revolution because the people of Iran felt differently, and they overthrow the Shah. They take people in our embassy hostage for over 400 days, and we got this guy, Khomeini. Different look to this guy, huh? Yeah, no suit here, doesn't look that friendly, perpetually angry. Yep, welcome to Iran. Now, many Arab nations, like I said earlier, seem to accept Israel, or at least tolerate it. And they seem to be, as of late, focusing on Iran over the last 20 years or so. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution, seizing the U.S. Embassy. All right, of course, they let everybody go, but the U.S. and Iran have been not exactly friends with each other ever since. And it's hard to ignore Iran. It's a large country, large military. It's anti-Western. It doesn't get along with the Western world too well. Not big fans of communism either. Right? They sent a lot of aid to Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion there, and with the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Iran tries to make inroads up this way, and as of late, they've been making inroads into Iran, into Syria, maybe even Lebanon. So it looks like they're trying to bring back the old Persian Empire again. It's a Shia country, not Sunni, so you already got that fault line between the rest of the Arab Middle East, and they're Persian, not Arab. So instead of Sunni Arab, they're Shia Persian, and it's one of the geographic fault lines in the world right here. But they haven't shot or attacked anybody yet, so maybe, just maybe, we'll let them yell at each other, and eventually everybody will calm down. Hey, let's talk about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Yep, 1979 to 1989. What was happening there? Well, the Afghan Communist Workers' Party had been around since about the 20s. Wasn't doing much because it's in a deeply religious Islamic country. And, communism and its atheist character isn't going to fly too well there. But somehow, some way, they managed to overthrow the Afghan government in 1978 and immediately outlawed Islam. That is the stupidest possible thing you could do in Afghanistan. Naturally, the entire country revolts. They can't hang on to it, so let's call in the Soviet Union. The Russians, direct military intervention. Translation, the Soviet Union gets stuck in a, shall we say, Vietnam-style war in the middle of Afghanistan. Yep, they do, because they think it's going to be over real quickly, and it's not. 10 years. Look at that. 79 and 1989. They brought an airborne invasion, took the main highway, thought it was over. Nope, bud. It's just getting started. Look at this. 10 years running around. Hey, remember this from US 1 and US 2? If you didn't take it, you should get around to it because you're going to see it. The three things needed for a successful revolution. What's the first thing? Support of the people. If you don't have support of the people, you don't have anything. Because the Russians go looking for these rebels, and the people in the village said, I haven't seen them. If they don't like you, they're going to tell the Russians exactly where you are, and you won't be around very long. So support of the people. If they support the revolution, you've got a chance. Sanctuary. You need a place to hide, to rest, train, and keep away from all those Russian military guys, right? And support from the outside. Where do you think they're getting weapons from, man? You don't think stuff breaks? Where do you think they got those Stinger missiles from? Who taught them how to use them? No, got some Green Berets. Can't really seem to account their whereabouts for. Yeah, so there had to be support from the outside. And this is what's going to result in the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan. They're never actually beaten, but this thing's going to go on forever. So what's the point in hanging around? So the Afghan people supported the rebels, Mujahideen. They had sanctuary. Welcome to Afghanistan. The whole place is full of mountains. Good luck finding anybody. And support from the outside. Those weapons are coming from someplace. Let me guess. United States. A little bit of payback for Vietnam to the Soviet Union. That's why the Russians ended up withdrawing in 1989. Afghanistan has a nasty reputation being graveyard of empires. The British went there in the 19th century. Nothing worked out for them. You just saw the Soviet Union went in 79, had to leave in 1989. Well, hey, why don't not have the United States jump in here? Well, we had a reason for it after 9/11, and we, tracked the guy responsible, Osama bin Laden, back to Afghanistan, and they wouldn't give him up, so they invaded the country, and we know how all this is going to turn out. Well, back the initial thing, right? They finally caught up to bin Laden in 2011. But we're still stuck in Afghanistan, and I'm pretty sure you know the reason why. Yep, we said it before. Here it comes again. Good thing to know. Three things needed for a successful revolution. We've been there since 2001. Clearly, the Afghan people are supporting the Taliban, or else this war would not be going on still. They have sanctuary. It's Afghanistan. You hide in the mountains, and believe me, you can disappear, and nobody, including other Afghans, can find you half the time. and clearly getting support from someplace on the outside. I'm guessing China and probably Iran, because, the weapons are going to break. They're going to run out of ammo. They're getting them someplace. Don't know of any real Taliban run factories anywhere. So what do you think is going to happen in Afghanistan? Right? The Russians never lost. They just got tired of running around, thought it was pointless, and left. They will never beat us. They will never drive us out. But, starting to wonder, what's the point in hanging around there? Do you know that this is the first year that people going into boot camp were born when the Afghan War broke loose? Yeah, an entire generation running around over there. People are going to start to ask, what's the point, right? Trying to find our way out. Well, nothing because we've done actually wrong. Well, a few things we might have done wrong, but let's face it, it's the Middle East. It's always been chaotic. It always will be chaotic. And until one power controls the entire region, it's just going to keep going on and on, man. Rinse and repeat. It's the Middle East. All right, I droned on long enough here. We're going to move deeper into Asia. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later.